One. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited. I have a guest with me today. Can you introduce yourself, special guest? This is Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hanna, holistically Hanna. I am a healer. I help people heal naturally from finding their inner healer within themselves and through the earth and reconnecting with spirituality. I'm so excited
I
to be.
I am excited to have you. And yeah, I think for me, we were talking before, but I think having you on here to chat was just I see a lot of myself in you and probably both ways. And I think we've just like it'd be like talking to the same person almost. This conversation is what we've sort of decided. So I'm really excited, and I'd love to know a little bit about how you got into this world of healing as well, and being a healer for people.
Sure. So I have learned over the last couple of years how to simplify it into
Yeah.
smaller stories because it's long. But it kind of starts back to early childhood of always feeling very strange within myself, within my body, always feeling different than the people around me, but not being able to really pinpoint what that was.
Mm,
Feeling really like alien-like almost in my
yeah,
being.
I
And
relate to
also
that.
being yeah, and also being incredibly sensitive, more
Mm,
sensitive than people could understand, and to a point where I felt really overwhelmed by emotions at a young age.
mm,
And also a lot of death from a young age, which was really stressful on my nervous system and my
mm.
ability to regulate my nervous system. I also grew up in a decently chaotic household emotionally, so it was hard for me to learn how to regulate those large emotions when my environment wasn't necessarily super calming
Supportive.
and
Yeah, not
yeah,
supportive of that.
not
Yeah.
not supportive. And my parents, they did the best that they could, but they just didn't understand how I operated, and I didn't either. So I grew up really Catholic. I went to a Catholic school my whole life from kindergarten to senior year of high school. I was in Catholic school. My mom was incredibly, still is incredibly religious, and my dad tends to be more of like the not the non-believer, but not a non is a non-practicing. So I
Mm.
grew up in a very like dual household where I was learning all about Christianity and religion, not necessarily believing in any of it because I struggled so much in myself and all the grief that I was going through at a young age. It was hard for me to relate to this idea of like a larger being that supported us and loved us,
Mm.
there for us when I felt the complete opposite in every area of my life. And as I got older, my sister, she really struggled with chronic illness from a young age. They
Yeah.
were always saying mystery symptoms. They weren't knowing how to heal her, but she was struggling with her health from the time she was a baby. And I got so tired of hearing the same thing from doctors. There's no cure, there's nothing we can do. Take a pill, do this thing. But there was no emphasis on the fact that maybe all of it was connected.
It's like,
That
why is it
maybe
happening in the first place?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
what's the root? So
Mm.
I started getting really curious as an older person. Like in my college years, I was struggling a lot with my hormones and I
Mm.
had chronic illness of the mind. So anxiety, depression, OCD that almost ate me alive from a really young age. And my sister had chronic illness of the body. So I wanted to create a way that we could learn how to heal the body naturally through all of the different modalities that we had here on Earth. So I started studying root cause doctors like Anthony William, Barbara O'Neill, and finding that there was a root cause for all of the different symptoms that we had in our body. There was a most likely the same underlying thing that was occurring. The trauma stores in the body keeps
Mm.
score, all of these books we learn about as we gotten older. And I started to take the things that made me different, the sensitivity, the inability to feel comfortable in my body, and allowed the things to start to surface more in my life and to
Mm.
learn about the root behind them. So I started studying the doctors and implementing the healing foods into my life and saw
Yeah.
such a change with my mental health and with my body that I knew that I needed to take the information and then start to spread it to bring it to other people. And through the healing of my body, I started to recognize that the way that I felt different wasn't because necessarily that I wasn't fitting into society. It was because I was a healer, because I was an
Mm.
intuitive, because I was a
Mm.
channeler,
Yeah.
because I was a medium to the other side. And growing up in a Catholic house, learning Catholicism, learning everything about that, but not learning about the spiritual world and the realms and everything that was me really
Mm.
made it go. down. So the more that I healed my body, the more that my mind began to heal and the more that I started to connect to my gifts. So
Oh,
over the last couple of
I
years,
love
I've
this.
just learned to heal my
Yeah.
body through food, learned and wanted to share it with my family and my friends. And then I decided to start my business um, after just seeing so much success within myself and in
Mm,
my body. I wanted to bring that forward to other people. So it's been a lot of years. It's probably been about almost 6 years of me healing my body naturally through food, through meditation, through spirituality, through herbs, and really finding the root cause of the things going on in my life and in other people's and helping them heal themselves because we are the healer. We just
yeah.
have to have it illuminated for us. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my story behind why I got started on it and like how it all kind of fits into my life.
Oh, I love this. And there's so many things bouncing around my head right now, but I think one thing that I want to say is I relate to you so deeply in the fact that you just feel a bit different. Oh, you've always felt a little bit different. And it's something that I've only really like maybe the last couple of months have sort of like clicked for me. With my background, I was a personal trainer for about 3 years, and it's very masculine science, and a lot of healing is science, right? But it's very like do this, do that, do this, do that, and you get X result. Whereas healing, it can be more intuitive and emotional, and yes, a lot of it's science backed, but it's still new agey, the mind body connection and everything, and spirituality as well. And I think coming from personal training, I always felt a little bit different. And I always had a lot of people be like, Britt, you're so much more than a PT. And, I'd have clients come into sessions with me, and half the time we would be, we would not be training on the gym floor. We'd be sitting and they'd be crying. Like, and I was like, okay, I need to do something with this because I believe that you can do all the study in the world, but you also might not have some natural ability that other people do have. And this is what a lot of people have told me over the years when I've felt imposter syndrome or been like, I can't do that. I'm this. It's like, no, you have something. And I just know things and I just know things and I just, whatever. And I think it sounds really similar with you, where you've just got that natural essence about you that makes people feel safe. And like you said, we've all got that natural healing ability. It's just almost like clearing the shit out of the way so the body can repair itself. And that's sort of what we do is help people clear the shit out of the way. And the body can't heal in a stress state either. So I think with yourself, you seem very calming and a warm presence. And that isn't also a really big driver for healing as well. Because if you've got a practitioner that's like yelling at you,
No, 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 no.
no.
Yeah,
So
I've
yeah, I
had that.
really,
So it doesn't help.
really, no.
Yes, I had a holistic doctor who was not necessarily super warm and loving and would turn things around to be like, well, what are you doing to create the symptom to come or things like that. And I'm just
Mm.
like, I understand that it's me and I have to work on stuff, but I don't do so good with the tough love. And I'm somebody who needs that like presence of grounding and authenticity and warmth, as you're saying. So I try to allow myself to get to a state and be that person for other people because
Mm.
be in something that you don't feel supported or understood in, and that can really halt your ability to heal too.
I think it's the cancer in us.
Yeah, body cancer here. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I know. And
No.
like it's been a blessing. It's just also such a feeling sign, right? It's such
Yeah.
a whew, and I just tend to be misunderstood by a lot of people because of that feeler healer for sure.
Mm. Yeah, like I'm sure you're similar, especially I know you've just done like a Reiki course, but like even just energy in your hands, I'm sure you just feel it randomly when you walk into rooms and you just walk into a room and you just feel something's off or your intuition is you just know things and it's like you can't even explain it sometimes. And I'm interested to know with you and your work, could you, I think, did you call yourself like intuitive healer? Do you call yourself?
Yeah. I would call myself more of the intuitive healer because as much as I'm certified in the work that I do, I don't feel that I use the certifications to necessarily learn my craft, but in order
Mm,
to make other people maybe feel more comfortable in the work I do and to get the science behind it so that
yeah.
I can really back the work I do. So I just got certified in Reiki 1 and 2. and conscious expansion breath work,
Mm,
which is really diving deep into the soul and releasing what's not serving us through the different modalities. Same
yeah.
with somatic healing, I'm certified in as well. But the thing with me is a lot of these gifts come to me before I do the certification, and then the
Yeah.
certification will follow. And then I'll be like, oh, I actually knew what I was doing the whole time, but not knowing that I knew what
Yes.
I was.
Oh,
Like the classes are like helping me to not imposter syndrome and gaslight myself as much.
no. Oh my God.
Um,
With the course that I'm studying now, it's holistic life coaching and mind body practitioner. And I'm like, why am I studying this? Like, I know this stuff. Like, I've just spent all this money. But
yeah.
again, it's kind of similar to, yeah, it's for other people half the time. And this is what I'm saying. Like, people have told me, someone might have studied, I don't know, for example, kinesiology or breath work, and they might have done all the bells and whistles certifications, but they might be a shit practitioner. And I use that word lightly, but they might not, be good at what they do. And they have all the bells and whistles, whereas someone else who like, I've had breathwork practitioners who've not even studied breathwork. They've had it passed down to them generationally and have had the most profound experiences with them. And it's just insane. So it's
Yeah.
a double-edged sword, the education, of course, yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that is I love to do it because then I can add the modalities into my practice and feel more confident in the work I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So I call myself intuitive healer because a lot of my guidance and my work is through the realms, is through my intuitive
Mm,
guidance and my channeling. But I am certified in the different modalities to make sure that I'm like practicing them correctly and not
yeah.
just making shit up because I just feel like sometimes I just do things and I don't know if it's real or not. And then similar to my Reiki, I was doing that with my clients and I was like not sure if I was doing it right. And then when I was learning it in class, I was like, wait, I've already been doing this and it's
Yeah.
right. And so I think it just more is, as I said, is like a backbone for me to not
Yeah.
feel that I'm in the imposter syndrome. But
Yeah.
the intuitive is who I am, and that is where
Mm,
I lead from, is the
yeah.
guidance within my intuition and where
Yeah.
I go from my.
Yeah, it kind of like gives you the pillars of the knowledge, and then maybe the intuition is drawing on what to use in certain situations and when to use them too. Because I think with a lot of people, it's not always a one size fits all thing. It's different people need different things at different times as well. And I've had two people with really similar symptoms that I've worked with, for example. Have you worked with polycystic ovarian syndrome much?
A little bit, and it's something that I feel that I have a little bit of too, so I've been looking
Mm.
into it more recently for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Being
I've
more
had
called.
a couple of girls that I've worked with, and they'd present with similar symptoms, but just because of where they're at in their journey, some people are ready for certain things and some people are not ready for certain things. So, for example, there's clients that I've worked with for a while and we've not even really done much of the deeper unconscious work because their body fully rejects it. And it's like, nah, not
Yes.
ready. And you can't push that sometimes. And I think, that might be the answer, but you have to build that rapport with people and it's only maybe a year into it or 6 months or whatever that they start to soften in and, oh, okay, this is what I probably need to move forward next, rather than just like, bang, day one, what's all your trauma? It's like, holy shit,
Mhm.
not ready for that.
Yes, I totally agree that each person needs something so different. And that's a big reason that I also have so many different certs, is because
Mm,
some people need more somatic than they need more breath work. And some
yeah,
people just need a moment to be aligned to themselves and they might need more Reiki. Or some people, most of my sessions, I just hybrid it together. So it's
yeah.
all one thing. But each person is so different. The way we learn is different. The way that we digest the information is different. And so I really like to have the different modalities as well because everybody is so different and needs
Mm.
something a little bit different.
Can you describe the difference for me between, and people listening, like breath work and somatics? Because in my brain, they're similar, and I do a lot of somatic work as well. And is somatics different to Reiki? Yeah, just go on that for us.
Sure. So somatic, I learned through the body-based breakthrough method, which is moving the body, allowing the wisdom to come in, and then journaling it through.
Mm,
However, I am not a big journaler, so I never really stuck with that practice. Somatics itself is opening up the body through stretching to allow the pockets we hold trauma in to be released.
mm,
Because when we do talk therapy or we do EFT or we do other things, the trauma can be moved, but it's not removed.
Mm,
Through somatic healing, you're physically opening up the pockets, the spine, the neck, the hips, where we literally hold the trauma and the fluid within the body
mm,
that needs to be physically moved out. So somatics is basically stretching the body and opening it up, versus breath work is you're breathing in oxygen while relieving the CO2 from the body. So
mm.
it's really like breathing and getting to a heightened state to reach your higher self,
Yeah.
versus somatics is more of the stretching of the body.
Interesting. Because I've seen that you've mentioned somatic healing, and I'm like, I obviously it's got to do with the body, but I didn't know it was stretching. So is that like
Mhm.
you would get people to do certain stretches and then yeah, talk me through a little bit about that. I'm really interested to know.
Absolutely. So somatics can be as simple as taking the arm over the body
Mm,
and stretching it across, or going into like a cat cow and moving up, kind of like a yoga situation, like
mm,
poses like that. But opening up the hips, like I'll have people sit and like put their leg above and pull it up. Like it doesn't always have to be something as crazy as going into a yoga pose. It can be something as simple as just opening up the shoulders and stretching. So it kind of depends on where people are feeling the stuck or the trauma within their body and then going from there. But I
mm,
tend to do the light and easy stretches because I'm not certified in yoga and I've never felt flexible enough to do a lot of the yoga stuff. So I tend to keep my practices at stuff that I'm able to do so that it feels more aligned to me versus like the
mm.
imposter syndrome trying to be more of like, oh, put your leg over your head to stretch it out. Like that will definitely help, but I can't do it, so I'm not facilitating in that way. So I tend to be super light and easy stretches that feel really relaxing and pleasure filled for the body.
Mm. Are there certain areas that you find most people feel release from in certain
Yeah,
stretches?
I would definitely say the hips are
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
It is a main place that we hold everything. So I would say the hips are a major thing, especially because we're sitting a lot. We're driving,
Mm,
sitting, watching TV, we're sitting in class, we're sitting in work, we're sitting a lot. So we just have a lot of tension and tightness within the hips, which then create a lot of instability in the knees and in the feet.
mm,
So then people start to have like knee problems or foot issues or their back feels weird. And it always stems most of the time, I don't want to say always, but majority of the time it stems from an imbalance within the hips and a
mm.
stretching that's needed within the hips. So getting the hips strengthened will help to loosen up everything around it.
Wow. So then how does that come into play with, I guess, the mind then? So after
Yeah.
someone does a stretch, do you mention the journaling then happens?
So for me, I work on similar to you, mind, body, soul.
Mm,
So with my clients, I always start with the mind. We want to start
mm,
by like affirming the way we want to feel about ourselves and the things that we want to bring to the surface. Because if you don't work, in my opinion, through the blocks first, the body will not follow. When
mm,
we work through the mind, the body will follow. It will say, "Oh, I actually believe that I can heal. Oh, I actually believe that like this is possible for me." Versus just going in and like starting with all of it can be difficult. So I
mm,
will usually start with my students in their first couple of months, like the first month, really specifically working on the mind while
mm,
implementing changes. So the journaling is always a part of my practice where people bring a journal and I will always say like journal when you feel called to it. Even if we're in the middle of a stretch or we're doing Reiki or we're doing something else, when you feel called to listen to the body's call to write, I want you to write. Because the
mm.
more that we allow the body to lead us, the more that it will.
Yeah.
So I really encourage people, if they feel like they want to journal during the session, to journal. If they don't want to journal, they don't have to. But usually at the end of the session, I will open up like a handful of minutes that they can just free write.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'll prompt questions. It really depends on what the person's coming in needing. If they're needing clarity, there might be more of like a journaling prompt during it, but I will always prompt them with questions so they don't feel like they have to just come up with stuff.
Yeah.
But I always just say, listen to the mind. If it says to journal, journal. If it says not to journal, you don't have to. And then kind
Mm.
of going through what the student needs.
Wow, I love this.
Mhm.
Very cool. And it sounds very, yeah, all encompassing. And I think that's why you mentioned you've got all these different tools in your tool belt to be able to express that. Is there anything else that's on your radar to dive into more study wise?
So I feel that they really come to me, the intuitive
Mm,
pull of being like, now is the time for this. I think at some point, possibly sound healing,
yeah.
because music has always been a huge part
Yeah.
of me and my background. So I think at some point, maybe sound healing. But other than that, I think right now, embodying the different modalities I've learned over the last year, I've been in
Minting them.
school from, yeah, I've been in school since January of last year. I've been in
Mm,
courses. So kind of just taking this time to embody it and to see how it does
mm.
with my practice. And then if something's needed, I will usually intuitively be like, okay, it's time for something or something will come to me. For instance, my somatic healing was a giveaway that I entered, totally didn't think about it, and I won the giveaway. So it was like something that was
Oh,
necessary for me to learn and it came to me.
yeah.
So usually with a lot of the things in my studying, it will prompt to me so much that I'll be like, oh, I actually have to do this right now.
Yeah.
But now I feel like called to just embody it and bring it to my students and to really feel alignment with my practice because before I had somatics and before I had Reiki and breath work, I was doing wellness plans for people and I was helping them with chronic illness, but it wasn't really feeling aligned to me. I knew I was a healer and I knew this was the work I was doing, but I never felt like I was actually doing the right thing. And now that I
Mm,
have these certifications, I feel really aligned to my business and to the work that I'm doing. It feels aligned to me. So I think just
mm.
honoring that and like embodying that for a while is kind of the next mission for me.
I love that. Rather than just like more, more, more all the time, it's about, cool, let me just like settle here and get really good and an expert at my teachings. And I relate a lot to the loudness of the niggle and the nudge to do something. And that happened for me with Reiki last year. It had come up a few times for me, like random thoughts, like, oh, you should go do Reiki. And at the time, I was a personal trainer. I was like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, why would I go do that? And
Yep.
I just kept shoving it. I was like, no, 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 until it got so loud one day. And I was like, fine, I'll do it. I don't even know what Reiki is. I don't really understand. Like I kind of knew, but not really. And I did it. I've only done my level one, but during the course, even because I'm sure with yourself too, doing it in person, you practice on each other. And one of the women that I treated during the weekend, she had the most insane experience with me doing that for her. And she was like, what did she say? She goes, thank goodness you were here because I needed that because she was going through a really hard time with something she was dealing with, and that practice that I gave her really helped settle her. And my thoughts were like, oh, what did I even say? Think like if it wasn't for anything, this course at least it was like to help her.
Mhm.
But then also during a Reiki session I received during that weekend, I got a download as I was just lying there being treated that my partner would get accepted to a job and we'd be moving. It was like always like a psychic intuitive drop in. Yeah. And
That's
then
amazing.
yeah, and like a week later he got the job and I was like, whoa. So I don't know. It was just it was wild and what they said in the Reiki course too was that your brain is going to want to not believe in this. I'm not sure if you got that as well during your course.
Yes, it was like definitely like the woo-woo of people being like not believing in the craft and then seeing
Mm,
it firsthand and being completely converted. I have always definitely believed in it, and I have been, and by always, I mean the last 6 years. Before that, I had no idea about any of it and didn't believe in anything. But now
mm,
I've had Reiki. I had a Reiki master in when I lived in New Hampshire, and she saved my life. And she was such a blessing for me that since then, I have just been so
open.
open to all
Yeah.
different things, but there are definitely people that see it after it happens and they're totally converted. But sometimes it's just like crazy because you're like, oh, I'm just rubbing my hands together, creating energy and healing people. And they're like, that happened. So I think like there are people, everyone in my class, thank goodness, was already like a practitioner of something. Like one guy was Qigong and another was yoga and sound. So everybody was kind of like that. But we had people come to our community session that I think were new to it and then totally into it after.
Mm. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey then from going from not believing or not knowing about any of this and then coming into it. Because especially
Yeah,
in the background of Catholicism and all of that. Yeah.
definitely.
How does that,
So
I'm sure it rubs up against each other.
it does, it does, it does. So from a really young age, I never believed in a higher power. I really didn't. I
Mm,
couldn't get myself to understand it. I really didn't give a shit about it. And that was hard for my mom because she lived her life by faith. And I give her so much credit for being such a devoted Catholic. My grandpa was anointing, he did anointing of the sick. He was a deacon at mass. Like my sister and I were altar servers. We grew up being so in the church,
yeah.
but I never felt connected to it. And I always felt like bad for feeling that way. But when you struggle so much as a child and you have so many things happen to you that are things that most people don't have to go through, but you also are incredibly sensitive and struggle with chronic illness of the mind, things weigh on you in a way that you can't get out of. There were holes when I was a child that I just couldn't get out of mentally. And it was hard for me to believe that there was something protecting me and that was good when the people I knew that were good people were dying of cancer and people that I knew that were good were like all these horrible things were happening and I just there was nothing inside of me that could believe in this higher power. And I remember in 2019, 2020, is 2020, maybe 2021, I was in a relationship and I remember being in California and with my mom at my grandma's house and talking about how I didn't believe in faith at all. There was just no part of me that
Mm,
believed in it. And knowing that the people that believed in it were people that had really good life experiences. I remember saying to her, the people who believe in faith that I see are all like celebrities that have all this money, all of these things. They have everything they could ever want. Of course you'd be believing in faith when everything is always working out for you. That's a really good, and I remember her being like, that's not how faith works. And I completely wrote her off. I was like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want anything to do with it. And a couple of years later, said relationship ended. It was like the deepest hole I've ever been in my life. I thought that I had reached the depths of hell before, but this had put me into a place that I really didn't think I would survive.
mm.
And it brought the dark night of the soul to me. And it brought first it was like angel numbers and tarot card readings on TikTok and all the things that you like
If you
you
see
see them
this,
and
it's
I'm
for you.
like, oh my God, it's for me. Oh my God. And I started getting really into spirituality, almost using it as a crutch in that time
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
felt that I had nothing else.
Well, I feel
And
like it finds you, and faith of any kind finds you in that moment. Any kind of
yes, it
faith.
did. It
Yeah.
really, really did. And that created a sense that I could connect to, that I could understand. Oh, I'm a
Mm,
channeler. I'm intuitive. Okay, all of these things. I connect to the earth. I connect to birds. I can understand angels because I've lost so many people. I
mm,
can connect to these outer realms that I couldn't connect to in Catholicism because there wasn't like something that I could personally connect to. So
yeah.
in 2021 was when the spirituality came to me and when I started to uncover the true faith of like what it was to be alive and what it was to be part of the universe and energy and the angels and the modalities of spiritual healing. And that is when the faith came to me. And I believe now in everything. I
Mm,
believe there is a reason that people believe in things they believe in, that there is a reason that things exist. And if it exists, I believe that it's correct, it's real. Like everybody has their own belief systems, and I'm very open and open-minded to what people believe in because I believe there is a reason we all believe those things.
mm,
I definitely still struggle with Catholicism and the whole thing. I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe that they are the top tier center of everything. I believe they are ascended masters and God is the maybe the creator of the universe and these things we learn, but I believe in spirituality. I believe in the angels. I believe in animals. I believe in the earth as a home for us energetic beings. And the more that I learn about myself, the more that I believe into the connection that we are the universe and that we are so
mm.
connected through our higher self. And so my belief in God in the church hasn't really changed, but
Yep.
my belief in the universe and in the energy and the spirituality realms has
Mm,
completely blossomed over the last 4 years of being more in that. So from going from complete atheist and not believing in anything to moving into more of like a more well-rounded, open faith for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the biggest things is it's when you get experiences, and I'm sure you've had some over the last few years that you can't deny anymore, and it's like kind of that nudge that keeps nudging, and it's like, okay, you can't make this shit up. Energy is energying, and the things are happening, and it just you just have to give in, and you have to stop resisting it, and you have to just like, okay, take me. It's all good.
Jesus, take the wheel. Yeah, I felt that on a lot. And when I was really great with my meditation practice, like a year and a half ago, I was almost like floating on a cloud every day. It was almost like my
Mm.
faith in no matter what went wrong, it was fine. It's all aligned. It's being removed because it's not serving me, or something's happening. It's a hiccup. It doesn't matter. It's small. And so, I was talking to my mom about that today, about feeling like I'm feeling less connected to that faith of
Mm.
surrender and wanting to make sure that I'm coming back to my healing so that I can get back to that place.
Yeah.
Because feeling afraid of things is like real. We all are afraid, but when you have a core faith in not only yourself, but in the universe and in the path and the plan, it makes the little things that occur like, okay, what is this opportunity? What is this showing me? How can I move through this with grace and not allow it to change the way I feel about myself? And I think true
Mm.
faith is having faith and knowing who you are as a person. Like you can have faith in yourself, then you can have faith in all the things.
Yeah, I'm interested in like the mention you said fear around. I don't know if you said fear is real, but there's a lot of spiritual texts that almost say fear is not real, and anything in that kind of fear state isn't actual truth. And while, it exists in our mind, but really when it comes back to it, everything is love because you've always got fear or you've got love. And obviously each emotion has different emotions that branch off that, like fear, depression, anxiety, all the things on that side, but then love, gratitude, peace, contentment, all that stuff. And I believe that a lot of us just swing so far to one way and we get stuck in there and then we think that and then the chain of events happen. It's the law of attraction 101, right? Like if you're living in fear, you're going to attract fear if you're living in love. And I believe that's probably what happened with your meditation because I was similar in 2021. I think every single day, I think for a month straight, I meditated with this certain like vibrational frequency tone meditation and did gratitude daily. And I was so just like on my shit about it. And I believe that month like redirected the course of my life for sure. And I'm the similar to you where I feel like you almost get to a point where similar to the crutch thing, you don't have to heavily rely on that stuff anymore to get you through the day. You just kind of like naturally embody it. But I do believe, especially in times of transition, it can be great to get back into that stuff to help you move through different seasons because I'm similar. I want to get back into that stuff more rigidly, but not rigid, more in a sense of like devotion to self rather than this is a box and I can't go outside it. It's like I'm doing these things because I know it'll get this outcome and I'll feel that way. So I totally agree with yeah, the floating on the cloud thing from meditation. It was just a wild month for me back. I can literally remember it, April 2021. It was insane.
Yeah, April 2021 was when my breakup happened, and it was
Mm.
like my whole life
Mm.
changed. And I feel like when I read a lot about the spiritual awakening of consciousness, it was like 2019 to 2021 was when a huge collective of us woke
Yeah,
up.
that was
And
me,
when like
2020.
COVID happened and
Yeah.
things like that, like all of it started to awaken. My healing journey through food started in 2019, but my awakening of spirituality didn't happen until 2021. So like that whole transition period was big, but that really aligns with so many of us collectively, like light workers that woke up during that period of time. So that like totally aligns
Mm.
with me as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. No, I was about 2020, I think, during COVID. And I think people, again, either went one way or the other. They went down that path or they went deeper into the hole of themselves
Mhm.
and were just, and obviously it's probably a blend of both. But yeah, I just found myself going the other way and my consciousness was expanding a lot. And yeah, it was a wild time. But it's almost like sometimes do you feel being back in that period of time where you're meditating all the time, is it almost like I have to get back to that. I have to get back to that. Do you feel that?
So for me, I still do my meditations every morning,
Yeah.
but I don't feel as connected to them as I did back then.
Yeah.
After I quit my corporate job in 2023, I had so much more time
Mm,
to be healing. And healing is a full-time job. I don't think people really understand. So like people talk to me about healing, I'm like, okay, like, do you really understand what you're talking about? Like, healing is a full-time job. And
mm,
when you don't have the time to do every single thing, it's very different than when you have all of the time in the world. So I would
mm,
wake up when I wanted to in the morning. I would have my juice, my smoothie, and then I would meditate for like an
mm,
hour. And then I would go rollerblading. And then I
mm,
would journal. And then I would do a meditation before bed. And I would do a workout, and that would be my day. And that's like a glorious thing. And so I was more connected things because I was not working and because it was something that I could completely and utterly devote my time to. Versus now, it's like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, fuck, here we go again. And then I start
mm,
meditation. It's not like I'm waking up and I'm like in this feeling of, I'm so happy to be alive and like I have nothing to do today. And it's such a beautiful feeling. It's like very different for me. So I still do my meditations daily. I do one at night and I do one in the morning, but I don't feel as connected to them as I did back then.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't lost my practice either, but I think I'm not sure if it's just a because the shift of where we were and maybe how it made us feel was such a large gap. Maybe that's why it felt so euphoric. Whereas now it's like we're already like maybe up here and it's yeah. Does that make sense?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. And I feel like I've always had trouble tapping in and seeing visuals. I've never been somebody who can visualize or tap into a meditation and like see colors and see all the things.
Mm,
I always thought that meant there was something wrong with me. But as I've learned through my certifications, that it's actually just the other senses are more heightened. So for me, like I have to give myself more grace in meditation because it's not something that comes easy to me. And when it did start to feel like I could see visuals and I could see stuff, that was like the most amazing thing. And now I'm back at a place where that isn't like necessarily occurring really fast for me. So it's harder for me to like really dive into the practice more. But I agree with what you're saying of being on a different frequency to start off with versus where we were beginning, where I was just like in a low like hole and I was trying to
yeah.
get out of it. And really helped me to reach those heightened states, whereas I feel I live on a completely different frequency now.
Exactly. And and maybe any like elevation higher, it doesn't
Mhm.
feel as much of a difference as it did before. It's like, whoa, I've just jumped like 50 levels. Whereas now it's like just fine tuning it. It's just like up, upper level, upper level. Yeah.
I love that perspective because yeah, it definitely felt different. I'm doing like similar meditations. I
Hmm.
love the Joe Dispenza like morning meditation because he does the visual with the emotion and it was great. And now I do it and I'm just like trying to visualize something that I want for my life. And that's
Mm,
almost more challenging, where it's like before I knew that I just wanted to get out of the hole and what I was looking for. And now it's like I'm having a hard time even deciding what I want to see in those like future experiences, right? It's like sometimes when you're so sad and you're so stuck, it's easier to visualize where you want to go
mm.
versus being somewhere where you're on that level of euphoria or frequency.
It's like what
Sometimes it
next?
can be
Sometimes it's like,
exactly, it can be
yeah.
difficult for me to be like, what am I visualizing for my future self? I don't actually know because the road is not linear. I don't see what's in front of me
Mm.
versus a couple of years ago, I was just trying to create anything that wasn't my
I was just trying to get
reality. So I
by.
was trying survive every day. And so I
Yeah.
was creating these beautiful ideas of my life. And a lot of those things have come to fruition. So I
Mhm.
know that it's powerful and I know that it's real. It's just getting to myself to a place where I can decide what I want maybe the next steps to look like, which has been hard for me.
I think that that is something that I've been experiencing, but I didn't know until you just put into words because
Okay,
I've,
I love that.
yeah, I that just clicked for me where it's like, oh, like I know so deeply the power of a lot of this, but maybe the direction's a bit foggy now, so we don't know where it's exactly going next. But once you've kind of got somewhere, I'm sure it'll be like full steam ahead. But before, when you're going from that, maybe let's just talk about the vibration of where you might have been, like blame, shame, guilt, depression, that low state, which I've also been in as well. There's only up from there. And it's only a one-way street out of it. And you're going from almost like what's a I don't want to use the word shit, but like what's like a synonym to like a feeling like that? Like, uh,
Um, for me, it was always like deep, dark depression. I
yeah,
always felt like
yeah,
depressed.
yeah. Let's
Shit,
use
though, like
depressed.
I love shit too. So like
Love
that
shit.
works for me.
We'll go
Whatever
from
you
the
want to say. Say it.
you do you girl. I like the word depressed then, or of just feeling like really, really low, going from there to good. And then that's where a lot of people get stuck, moving from good to great and like
Yeah.
great to excellent. And I think it's like, oh, I'm out of the shit. I'm out of the depression. I'm good. I'm all right. I'm like uh living. Let's just go from surviving. I think there's like a ranking of different things. It's like surviving, surviving, living. I don't know what it is, but there's like different rankings. And it's a lot harder to almost go from good to great because we're so comfortable here. It's like, but I'm all right. I'm fine. Like nothing's wrong anymore. And it's just that little 1%er. Our mind loves to trick us into being like, you're fine here. Nothing's wrong. But it's okay to go from good to great and even great to excellent. Maybe that's where we're at, like great to excellent.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel like for me, like a lot of shadows have come up this year.
Mm,
So feeling like more into those parts of me that are, I wouldn't say like necessarily depressed because I have been in my depressive states and they're very different than where I'm at. But I
yeah.
definitely still have moments where I'm struggling
Mm,
in ways that are really so difficult for me. And I think like I live on a frequency that is definitely much better
mm,
and definitely thriving more, but I still am just like in those moments where I really feel the heavy stuff. And a big reason why I want to move back into my meditation and my practice is because the way that like not doing those things has then affected me to kind of move back into those lulls of like not feeling absolutely even like good, just kind of feeling like eh,
meh. Yeah.
Nah, which is like great, but I remember being in those euphoric spaces and not even that I need to always be there, but just feeling more aligned and good. And that was like a huge part of me moving, making sure I'm moving back into my routines to get stronger again.
And I think sometimes you do need the discipline of those things to change a habit and to change things as well. And you've got to be like almost like reparenting yourself. Like you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that, and stick to it because, change happens through repetition. And I'm gonna turn my phone off. Um, did you hear that, by the way? My ringtone. It's
Like a
Kim.
bark?
It's Kim Possible.
I thought it was a bark. I was like, I just heard a dog.
No, I don't know if you know. I was just wondering if you heard that Kim Possible. It's like did 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 it.
Yes, I do. Is that your
Yeah.
ringtone?
Yeah.
I
So
love that.
I was wondering if you heard that. I didn't even know what I was talking about. But anyway, I'm just going to switch gears because I wanted to go along the lines of you've mentioned, and I've never heard this term before, chronic illness of the mind. I've never heard that being worded that way. And then also, if that can tie into what we were talking about before around the parts stuff you were talking about, I'm sure they'd be very linked. Because I've definitely had my fair share of chronic illnesses of the mind, and I think that was a big part of my work was 2022. I was seeing psychologists and, trying to get on certain medications for certain things and didn't end up getting certain diagnoses. And I think that was a big Kickstarter of, there was a 2020 kind of awakening, and then 2022 was another like breakthrough of healing for me because I didn't get the, Western or whatever you call it, Western, yeah, Western labeled diagnosis, and I couldn't get the medication. I had to be like, all right, well, how else do I fix this? Have you experienced similar?
Yeah. Similar. So I kind of like coin different terms, like
Mm.
chronic illness of the mind. As you said, it's not been said that
Like
way. I kind of
trademark.
just I just create my own terminology and hope for the absolute best. But for me, my chronic illness was not necessarily that my body was fighting me, but my mind.
Yeah. Mine was
And
the
I
same.
remember from a young age, anxiety eating me alive, but more like
Mm,
OCD symptoms that were chronically the same thoughts going over and over and over. Not like I need to turn the lock 6 times, like your typical OCD of like, I need to do this 3 times, or I need to do this. It was like my mind just ruminated on the same
yeah,
shit
same.
over and over, and it could not let go of it.
Yeah.
The way that I felt could not be removed. And I was in therapy from the time that I was 10
Mm,
until now. And that's been 17 years, almost 18 years of
mm,
intensive therapy. And I was on medication since I was 17. And I
mm.
recently got off of it at the beginning of this, not this year, 2024. I got off of it in the middle of 2024 for the first time in 10 years. I'm off of my medication. And to say
Wow.
that is like its own like thing. But chronic illness of the mind for me was that no matter what I did, my mind was always attacking me. I
Yeah.
was always in a state of depression. I was always in these thoughts, my anxiety. I used to bite and pick my nails like to the point of blood. Okay, yep, I understand you. And like now they're better, but my cuticles still like from time to time, I'm like,
Yeah.
but to the point where like kids at school would be like, "Did you put your hand through a shredder? Like, what's going on?" Like they were so bad that they were like, "Oh, the blood was like almost down to here." Like
Oh,
my anxiety and OCD was like all the time. And a lot of it had to do with toxins and metals in my brain. So we found that out through my holistic doctor that I had 400% mercury in my brain in 2020,
wow.
which you should not even have like any, and 100 is the max, and I had 400.
Wow.
So that's a huge reason like that. And when I was 17, I self-diagnosed with bipolar disorder because I had done all the research and I was like, I must be bipolar. And I went to the doctor, I brought all of my information, I said, this is me. And they said, great, all right, we'll put you on medication. They put me on 800 milligrams twice a day of lithium. I was
Oh,
on lithium for 4 years.
is
And
that like
it
a antipsychotic or what is that?
It is for bipolar disorder, and it
Yeah.
helps to minimize the effect of the different personalities, I guess. It helps with depression, all the anxieties, all the things. But it is like one of the strongest ones. And to be 17, put on that for 4 years,
Mm,
did an absolute fucking number on my body and my mind.
mm,
Um, and all of that coming off of the medication. I had all of these thoughts like I don't need the medicine. Like the medicine's there, but like there's nothing wrong with me. Like I'm going through these things and I need to heal these different things. And as I've come off of the medication to move into the parts work, was healing the toxins, getting rid of heavy metals out of my brain made such a difference between the way that I was moving through everything. Because when you have heavy metals in the brain, think of like an engine in a car that's overheating. It's just smoking and nothing is happening and it's smoking
mm.
and smoking and smoking. The brain can only do so much when it's hot, when it's on fire. The
Yeah.
same neuron is firing in the same hole and you're having the same thought and it's getting stuck and then it's hot and the brain is like,
Inflamed, yeah.
well, my brain was like that for like my whole life. So when I started healing the heavy metals in my brain and getting off of medication the last couple of years, it has been easier for me to tap into what I call parts work,
Mm,
which is understanding the core beliefs we feel of ourselves and how they mirror in our external world. So
mm,
for me, one of my core beliefs that I struggle with is not feeling good enough.
mm,
So like we think about the parts of ourselves like, oh, well, I struggle with like not feeling successful if I don't make money, or my relationships, I keep bringing in the same person, then I feel like shit about myself after. It's like, well, where do those all come down to? They come down to our core beliefs of self. And that belief for me is like, no matter what, I am not good enough. And those beliefs then stir into the brain that already feels so shitty and overheated and
mm,
OCD and anxiety and all the things. And then it starts to reframe the way we feel about ourselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. For 26 years of my life, that was just in my brain. And through like the chronic illness of the mind, those beliefs got more embedded in me because the OCD was reoccurring the same thought over and over and over and over. So the last year or so has been really me diving deep into the psyche of my parts and of my inner child and allowing her to come forward with the things that she feels. And the medication not being in my system has allowed my gifts to come forward more and allowed me to tap more into her and
Mm,
allowing her to have a voice for the first time in her life and share with me experiences that have happened or allow patterns to continue to resurface until I understand what she's showing me.
mm,
So, a lot of my chronic illness was of the mind from a young age, and it still is for me. And the more that I tap into it, the more that I understand the parts of me that are trying to show up through my subconscious and trying to awaken and create awareness for me of the parts that still need healing.
mm,
Because the parts aren't coming up to bash us and to make us feel like shit. They're coming up to alert us that there is still something in us that feels a certain way, that wants to be acknowledged, that wants to be healed so they can move through it. Not because they're
mm,
trying to ruin our life or make our relationships like shit or make our experiences like shit, but because there's a part of us that still feels that way, that's just being like, hey, like, could you acknowledge me? Could you like see what's going on here? And that really is the parts work. So, through my mind being my deepest, darkest enemy most of my life, these
mm.
patterns and these parts of how I felt about myself were just continuing to like circle and circle and circle. So
Yeah.
now is like opening up those parts and allowing them to not run wild, but to run free so that
Yeah.
I can like work with them and heal them.
Mm. It's so interesting, and I love the approach that you sort of mentioned. I'm not sure if this is exactly sort of how it meant to happen, but almost tackling the health, tangible stuff, the brain, metal stuff first, because all of that shiny stuff up the top is not going to work unless you've got solid health foundations. And that's very much how I work too, is like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like triangle approach where, all of this parts work or inner child work or whatever is not really going to be much use if you are eating like shit and your brain's on fire. Like it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. And yeah, it was that intentional, or did you find that you mentioned with the clarity that this started coming in because you were more clear? Because I've experienced similar with my intuition just like being on fire after healing, but not even knowing that this was going to happen as well.
Yeah, I think that the healing of the body, it definitely came first for me in this instead of
Mm,
the mind, which is
yeah.
like backwards of how I think with my students. But for me, it was an awareness that there was something I could do about it
Yeah.
versus before it just felt like something that was going to plague me my whole life. The doctor's like, well, you just always have to be on these medications, Hannah. You're always going to have to be that. I'm like, fuck you. I don't want to be on antidepressants my whole life. Like
Yeah.
that changed me. It changed my personality. It changed my ability to show up. It changed my gifts. It changed everything. So finding the ability that you could heal through food, through supplements, through removals
Mm,
of things and adding in things, and that there was a root cause to things helped me to be able to believe in the healing of the body. So the healing of the body came first, and then the changes came after, for sure,
yeah.
of like my mind.
Yeah. I found around that time that I mentioned the Reiki course where my intuition was on fire. I really got clear. I was like, okay, how do I feel like this has happened? Because once upon a time, it was almost like there was a block, and there's no way that, let's call them downloads or channeling or whatever, it just doesn't get through because you don't want a clear open channel. And for me, I know some things that definitely heightened my intuition around that time was drinking less caffeine. So I cut coffee out for a certain amount of time last year because one sip of it, I'm not sure how coffee is with you being having anxious thoughts your whole life, but I used to rely on it almost like a self-medication every morning for coffee. And then one day in June last year, I had a sip of it and it just sent me into an anxious spiral. And I was like, I don't have time for that. So I cut it out.
Yeah.
I cut it out and I started drinking ceremonial cacao instead because I'd heard a lot about it. And my intuition was just like on insane. But I do know that was one thing, reducing the caffeine, getting off certain medications. I've been on, the contraceptive pill. I've been on, what is it? Antidepressants as well. And it's just like a block, like almost like you're wearing a tin hat and nothing can get in. Like nothing's getting in, nothing's getting out. It's just you're blocked. And then another one was definitely the types of food that I was eating, I think, as well, because if you're constantly feeding your body inflammatory food, rubbish, all of this stuff, that's what our body's made of. Like food is medicine, food is healing. And I just remember like just I think that's what strengthened my intuition over the years as well, is just without even knowing it. It wasn't even like a purpose of like, oh, I'm healing my body so that I can strengthen my intuition. It was like I just want to feel better. And then that came with it. It was insane.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I was on birth control for years, but it just never had like a positive effect for my body. So now I
Uh,
do like natural pills. I do only natural stuff.
yeah, same.
But I found out for caffeine wise, I didn't really ever drink coffee until
Mm,
a couple of years ago. So that was something that was new for me. And it definitely has its moments where there are days where I'm like, actually, not today. We're just like not gonna have that today because it's not gonna benefit us. But for me, it was alcohol. I
yeah,
was a
actually, yeah.
huge I
Yeah.
was like biggest partier
Yeah.
in the fucking world. I was drinking. They would call it the Hanna method in college. I would have a mason jar that was 32 ounces, 16 to 32, and it would be full to the brim with vodka with like a
Yeah.
little splash of Coke for color. That was the Hanna method my freshman year. I know that everyone that went to college with me, like at least freshman year, it was like that was batshit crazy. Like not one person saying Hanna Bauer is not batshit crazy. Like that's what happened, but it was my way of coping through everything. But I
Mm,
drank like a fish from my junior year of high school until my senior year of college. I was basically intoxicated. So for me, getting away from alcohol, I
yeah.
didn't drink for 2 years.
Yeah.
And
No,
it was like I had lost all this weight. I felt so much better. And now I don't really have the taste buds for it. Like I don't really drink. Like I'll have a little bit of tequila, but like I don't like the way it makes me feel. So I'm more of like plant medicine girly. So like I go to parties, I'll have my weed or a shroom or something, but like I really try to stay away because the alcohol was a huge detriment to my anxiety for sure. So that cutting that out has been a game changer.
I forgot about that. That's like a massive part of my journey too, actually, because in 2022, I was, seeing a psychologist on antidepressants, whatever. And the alcohol, I'd make like take one step forward, then I'd go drink on the weekend, take two steps backwards, and I'd feel like shit for a whole week. And I'm like, is not, this is so counterproductive to what I'm trying to do here. So I just had to cut it off for one, for that, but two, because I was a bit out of control when I drank. I didn't drink all the time, and it wasn't like I was drunk 24/7, but when I drank, I drank. And I believe it probably sounds similar to you, avoiding, escaping, and then I'd act up because I was avoiding emotions and I'd get angry and whatever. And then Sunday morning was just a shame hangover. And I was like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. My poor boyfriend. I'm so sorry. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm sick of my shit. And you kind of have to get to a point like that where you have to get sick of your shit. And that's what's just clicked for me then is like, that's another moment of almost like rock bottom. So you have to go up. And it's different from moving from shit to good rather than moving from great to excellent. Like, that's almost like a bit harder because it's when you're at rock bottom, it's like, well, if I keep going down this path, I'm probably going to be dead. Like,
Yeah,
I have to change.
actually. 100%. Yeah. And I agree with you on those, like the thoughts. Like after I would drink, I would say things that I shouldn't have said. I would sob in parties. People would be like, what the fuck is wrong with
Yeah.
her? I'm like, all the stuff from my life was coming out from the vodka. And I'd be sitting on the stoop just wailing on the phone to my sister or my mom at a party. And people are like, what's wrong with her? And it was my modality of being able to feel the things I didn't
Yeah.
know how to feel. But it was the
Yeah.
social anxiety, like after waking up the next day and being like, fuck, I can't believe I just DM'd my whole Instagram following on their stories. Like, love this. Looks like I used to just DM people like shit. And I'd be like, what did I just post on my story? Nobody needs to see that. Like, the
Okay.
things that I would do and coming out of just like that anxiety spiral I was putting myself in
Yeah.
because when you drink and you have trauma, the two of them together, oh, it's
It's a
danger.
nice little mix. Oh my God, you just unlocked a memory in my brain. You just get like this false sense of confidence when you drink and you're like, I'm best friends with everyone. Everyone wants a message from me right now. Everyone wants me to reply to their stories. And I might not have spoken to them for 3 years, but I'm just gonna message them. I can clearly remember myself doing that too, and that's so funny you say that because that was just like my thing, just this false sense of like, I don't know, va va boom, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% being excited, like seeing somebody's story, never talking to them, and being like, this looks amazing. I love this for you. Hope you're doing well. Or like something that's like so weird, or these guys that I liked and I would like message. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. So taking that off the plate
Yeah.
has been a game changer for me for my anxiety as well. Like I
Yeah.
absolutely put that in the category for sure.
Yeah, and I think when you're in that anxiety, even for me, it was the shame spiral on the Sunday morning because my partner and I have been together for nearly 7 years, and God bless him. Yeah, it's been a while. God bless him because the start of our relationship, my drinking habits were not great because I just couldn't control things, and we'd have to sometimes leave parties or leave clubs because I would just start shit and not even necessarily start a fight, but just be acting up. And he's like, guys, sorry, we've got to go. Brittany's had a limit. We've got to leave. And he would just like, we just have to leave because I was just like acting up. And it got to a point where I was like, I can't keep doing this to him, to myself. It's embarrassing and it's not acting in alignment with who I want to be. And I'd get into these shame spirals. And that's all I believe shame is us acting out of alignment with who we want to be and our values. So I was acting over here, but I wanted to be over here. And like it just it didn't mix match. And I believe shame is kind of like a I feel like you use the word either messenger or an alert system, like, hey, you're not acting in alignment with who you want to be. Like, let's shift something.
Yeah, totally. It's like the magnets when they're backwards, right? Like they have to draw to
Mm.
each other, but they go like this,
Yeah.
where you're like, they're meant to be together, but flipped. Like flipped, they
Mm.
move, but like the same thing, the unalignment and that dysregulation of like the magnets. That's how I
Yeah.
kind of set my brain.
Mm. I want to talk a little bit about your corporate job.
Sure.
That's just
Sure.
you're like, okay, that's come to me that I want to speak to because yeah, I'm sure that would have been a whole thing, like leaving that into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I am very multifaceted. I always have been. I'm good
Yeah.
at a lot of different things, but I get bored really easily.
Are you a manifesting
So
generator? Do you know much about human
I'm a
design?
manifest. So I was born on my kitchen floor on July 4th. So nobody actually knows the exact time. It's in between a 20-minute period. And this is how my life works. Within the 20 minutes, the rising sign changed.
Okay.
So the so within so I'm either late degree Aquarius rising and a manifester or an early degree Pisces rising and a manifestor generator. And I
I
feel
see
that
you
I'm
as
a
a Pisces
hybrid.
rising.
A lot of people say that, but my Aquarius, like I've always so identified with that like quirky, like
Mm.
entrepreneurial, like out of the box, detached kind of feeling. So
Yeah.
we did a little, I've worked with some people that have tried to kind of pinpoint it for me and they can't. So I
Yeah.
feel like in this, if I'm a hybrid,
Yeah.
so I'm just like a hybrid of both. But to answer your question, like either manifestor or manifestor generator, I feel called to both.
Yeah.
But I've done a lot of different things in my life, and I get bored after like 3 or 4 months. But I try to stick it out because
Mm.
it's not always a good look to like just like leave things all the time.
Up and leave,
Uh,
yeah.
but I'm very analytical, but I'm also very creative. So
Oh my.
I like to do things that are analytical sometimes because they really like stem the brain. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's creative. So when I graduated from college, I had my degree in business management and marketing. So I could really do anything. And that was the problem was that I could do
Mm.
anything.
Really
I didn't
broad.
know what. So I was like, oh, I could do anything. And I was top of my class and I applied to every job I could think of and I got denied from every single one. It was 2019, it was right before COVID, and it was just like the worst time in the job market. And I remember I was working with a career coach all of the time, working on my resume, like 7 days a week working with this guy, trying to figure it out, applying for jobs, getting denied. So I was a substitute teacher when I first graduated from college, which was like not for me. I did that for a couple.
Wow.
And then I finally got a job in insurance, and it was in Connecticut. And Hartford is like the insurance capital of, the country. So it was like, okay, I'm doing this, it's fine. It paid me like $12 an hour. I think I made $26,000 my first year. It was like awful. I was in subrogation insurance, which I don't even know what that is. I couldn't explain it to you even now if there was a dictionary in front of me. Like I wrote the same note in every file, 8 hours a day, every day, and it was fucking awful. So I did that for about a year and a half. And
Mm,
I got my job in January of 2020, and March of 2020 was COVID. So I worked from home from like March until I quit. And it was just its own thing. And I felt a calling inside of myself that I was meant for something more, but I
mm,
wasn't sure what it was. I was like, I have a big purpose. I'm incredibly smart. I know what I'm doing, but like this job is not it. And
yeah.
what is it that's going to be it? So I started reapplying for more jobs and more jobs and more jobs. And I did all these interviews, didn't get anything. Finally got a job as a marketing coordinator for a demolition company in Boston. And it's the money was much better. The people were cool. I was like, this is 100% what I want to do. I did it for almost 2 years. I was promoted a couple of times in that period of time. I was really good at what I did, especially because I'm a yes man and whatever they needed, I was like, sure, 100%. I'll work myself
Mm,
into the ground for this job. 100%. But then it got to a point after about a year and a half, I would say there was just a turning point where what they wanted from me and who they wanted me to be was not who I was. And it was during
mm,
my transition
mm.
into spirituality and wellness. So I started healing my body, started healing myself, and started realizing my alignment to corporate and to what the 9 to 5 expected of me.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna work. And I
It's
had a
giving
lot of experience.
Aquarius.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like so many things in my life are like Aquarius, and then so many things are Pisces, and so many things I'm like, fuck, like which one am I? I don't know. That's what
They're
I'm
very
saying. Like I
they're very similar though, I feel.
yeah, so it's just like always bouncing between. But I had a lot of encounters at work that were showing me that these were not the people that I really could see myself futurizing like my life with. Like,
Mm,
they lived to work, they didn't work to live. Like
yeah.
they loved being there 16 hours a day. They made it their whole personality and their whole life. And I couldn't do that. I was waking up at 5 in the morning, driving to Boston, having a whole day there, and then expected back the next day at 5 in the morning. I was working till 10 at night, expected to be back at 5. Like the hours were insane. And I remember having a couple interactions with my boss and a couple of other people that were really rough that made me
Mm,
realize that like this was for me. And then I had three really large experiences within a 3 week period that were like, if you don't quit your job, we're actually going to make your life a living hell. And those were, I broke my foot in my sleep. I woke up with a broken foot. Don't know, have no idea, no idea. About 2 weeks later, I crashed my car into a pole and almost totaled it in a snowstorm. Like full on $19,000 worth of damage in my car. They
whoa.
almost didn't because I like was so like upset. They fixed it for me. Thank you God. And then I ended up in the hospital a week later with a mystery illness that they still haven't figured out that has like created eczema and rashes all over my body since. So within 3 weeks, all those large experiences happened after I'd already made the decision that this job was like running me into a wall.
Mm,
And after that, I had a really bad experience with my boss, a really bad interaction, and I was just like, this is it. This is it. And I
yeah.
quit my nothing lined up, no idea, but this need to heal. And so I spent from January until I started my business in June of that year, like babysitting and doing like random jobs, but really like taking the time to heal my body. And like I created a bunch of businesses in between, like a photo business and a clothing business and my wellness business, but like I had to keep myself busy in order to feel like I was moving through it because when you're 25 and you're unemployed and everyone's making money, it's just
Mm,
my favorite thing. So I took that time. I slept in for the first time in my life. I healed my body for the first time in my life, like really truly dedicated myself to my healing, got into my manifestation, into spirituality, like all the things, and then decided to create my company through like a bunch of different moments that had happened that I was like, this is the time to do it. And yeah, since June of 2023, I have been moving and shaking with my business and just like trusting where it's leading and evolving as it does.
I love that. And I think, do you have any? I've just got some people in mind that I can think of that might be in either a corporate world or
Yeah.
unemployed. Like I've got a couple people in mind. What would you say to someone who almost like has that burning underlying thing that they know that they're made for more as well. Because I have that as well, where I'm like, I know that I'm here for a bigger purpose. What would you say? Like, especially to younger Hannah, like a few years ago, or what would you say to these people?
Yeah, so when you feel that way, there is a reason for it.
Mm,
And to not dim that voice, because as loud as
mm,
it is, it's loud and it will almost become a stubbornness to other people because you're like, I don't want to do this, or this isn't for me, or I know there's a bigger purpose. And people who don't have that will try to shut it down as like a stubbornness or you not wanting to do the things because you're from our generation, for instance.
mm.
That was what the big thing was. Not dimming,
Yes.
yeah, not
So
dimming that voice
ungrateful.
loud. So ungrateful that you're like this. I'm like, please, you have no idea. I would say keep running with that and knowing that it will evolve in time. Like in the moments of
Mm,
unemployment, how are you taking care of yourself and how
mm.
are you using this time as actually a catapult to your growth? Because
Yeah.
we look at it as really like a lack, a scarcity. We need money to survive. 100 fucking percent. It is totally scary. But how in these moments that you're gifted the rest, are you taking the rest? Are you doing the healing? Are you allowing your body to regulate its nervous system? Like giving the opportunity to your body that it's so craving of that like need. But if you're feeling really passionate that you were made for more, then you are. I
Mm,
stick on that in every aspect of it because my younger self, I sit with her a lot where she was sitting there when she was 23 on the bed, like sobbing that she knew she was made for more. And it almost felt like something was like crawling out of her throat telling her that to know that like in a couple of years it would make sense. So just to
mm,
keep on the path of alignment and to allow the body in the moments of unemployment or not feeling like you're moving forward, to allow the body to sit and heal and rest. And because this is the time to do
mm.
it.
Yeah. I think as well, it's one big thing that I think back on the scarcity conversation is almost like going into lack or rush. And if you have emptiness, and this is something I struggle with, if there is empty space or empty stillness, it's wanting to fill that. And it's like, oh, something's wrong. I need to fill it. Quick, quick, quick. What's my next thing? It's like, don't rush.
I feel that too, like in my life now, as I just moved away from my part-time job. I was
Mm,
doing my business full time from June until January of the following year. And then I moved out to LA and I didn't know anybody. So I wanted to create like a little community for myself and also have a steady paycheck come in while I was
mm,
building. And so I worked for a year at this gym and it was great for a while until it wasn't. And I recently just
mm,
moved away from it to pursue my entrepreneurial full time. And that stress of like that same feeling is like definitely coming through. So like allowing myself in the moments that I do have like days off or rest to not always fill it with something. Like that was a big conversation for me and my mom today was like, well, I don't have anything to do like work wise tomorrow. She's like, well, why don't you just rest? Why don't you allow yourself? I'm like, well, I got to keep going. I got to keep working. I got to keep moving. And it's like to really remind ourselves in the moments of rest, are we taking them? Are we allowing them to
mm,
do what they are made to do? Because when we look back, it's always like, it's not that I always wish you could do more. It's like, I wish that in those moments I had faith that it was all going to be
yeah.
okay and that I was allowed to rest in those moments and not that I
Panicked.
needed to always be doing something. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I felt that because I've recently just moved into state in Australia and I'd gone from working in a gym, personal training, sometimes 12 hours a day, all the things, and then moving down here, I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue that lifestyle and go back into a gym. There was a quiet voice saying, no, you've got all these other gifts that you need to like pursue and fulfill and whatever. But there was a part of me that wanted to fill the empty space because I didn't have a job when I moved down here straight away. I was unemployed for a little bit and it felt so empty, so strange. My partner moved, we moved for his job. So he had a full-time job. I was at home being like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And
Yeah.
yeah, and knew my business was going to be pivoting from personal training to, what I'm, again, evolving into now. And there was a part of my brain that did want to go back into a gym because I was like, well, it's just comfortable and it's easy and I know what I'm doing and I'm really good at it. So I applied to work in a gym and I'm so glad this happened. But during my interview, literally, I was like, I don't know if I want to work here. Not something that
Yep.
you say in an interview, babe, but I was like, oh, I'm not really sure if I want to work back in a gym anymore. And I didn't get the job, clearly, obviously. But that was my
Blessing.
that was my intuition, like, because I was trying to convince myself, yeah, we should apply for a gym, we should go back into the gym, blah, blah, blah. But it was almost like I said it and like my mouth was like, why did I just say that? But I knew I knew I shouldn't, or I knew that's not what I wanted. And I knew I'd just be getting stuck back in the same cycle that I was in. Not that I was running from it, but I had grown from, I guess. And I had I don't say bigger because it's not like it's bigger and better, but like a bigger purpose to fulfill over here. And I'd just be keep myself stuck and small. But um yeah, the silence and the stillness, isn't it interesting that that's like something that we fear?
It's like something that is so healthy and good for us, but it's honestly terrifying. And we feel that we need to be filling it with something because we're taught societally like that
Productivity.
the productivity is how you get better. It's like actually rest is like so productive. And I'm listening to myself. I'm like, you're such a, you're just like, please right now at this. But like, yeah, it is sometimes rest is the most productive thing that you can do. And in those moments, like, realizing that it's happening for the higher purpose versus like punishing you for something.
And it's hard though because trust
Mhm.
is faith without evidence. So
Yes.
it's not having the evidence that things are going to work out, but trying to have faith regardless. Whereas what would be the opposite of that? Like, I don't know, confidence. Confidence is faith with evidence. They're two different things. Confidence is like, oh, I'm good because I've got X, Y, Z, 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 and that's, I've got all the things. But trust is like, I trust something's going to happen, but I don't have all the bells and whistles to say that it's going to happen, but I trust. And trust is hard in moments of uncertainty.
100%. That's something that I'm like moving through right now. So it's like really resonating for me what you're saying.
In what way for you?
So for me right now, because as I move away from my part-time and I move fully back into the entrepreneurial, there are moments of being like the consistent income isn't there. And not that the part-time
Mm.
was like giving me all of this. It was just like a little cushion every month. And
Yeah.
now I'm fully moving back into doing my own thing. And it's not always like the consistent income. So like trusting that it's all aligning in the way that it needs to and I'm doing the right thing and being patient as it unfolds because I tend to be very impatient with myself while
Yeah.
patient with others, very impatient with myself. And so trusting in these moments of the slowdown that the clients will come, that the opportunities will come, that it's all going to be okay is hard for my analytical and evidence-based mind to be like, okay, well, but where? Like,
Mm.
where is it happening?
Mm.
So that really resonates for me right now, for sure.
I think it's a just a human thing, like a survival need as well, even just I'm good, I'm okay, I'm all right. Yeah, and I guess that is our logical side of our brain, that reptilian brain wanting the logic and the answers, but then the other part of us that wants to trust and have faith and all this stuff, like they rub up against each other. But yeah, I it's a dance for sure.
Definitely, definitely it is.
When did you leave your part-time?
Last Monday was my last day, so it's
Wow.
still pretty fresh. Yeah, I gave my 2 weeks, and then the 2 weeks were like the slowest 2 weeks of my life
Mm.
because I was just so ready to be done. And then I was showing up, I still had like 10 shifts, and I was like, oh, I'm just doing it to do it. But it was just becoming very toxic for me, the environment, the work. For part-time, it was becoming more stress than anything. And I was working 25 hours a week, and it felt like I was putting all of my energy into something but my business. And then I was trying to do my business and I had nothing for it.
Mm.
So it just came as like an intuitive hit that I needed to step away. And then I waited until the right moment. I knew like 4 months ago that I needed to leave, but I needed to wait until I had my direct, like, this is the time to go. And I kind of had to sit in it. But this will be my first full week that I haven't been there. So it hasn't really sunk in yet that I'm not there, but just the freedom. I need freedom in my life. Like I cannot
Mm.
be constrained to a schedule or a structure that does not work for me. So being away from it, I think will just bring me more like the ability to have more freedom.
Wow. I think it's such a hard dance when you work for yourself and entrepreneur life to take risks and calculated risks, but also have that safety for yourself. So I do totally understand because I've got a job now too, like a part-time job when I moved down here, a casual job. And it's such a hard dance between, okay, I need income to live and to get by. And especially myself, like I've pivoted from most of my income being on the gym floor to now mostly this kind of work. And it takes time. And something that I forget as well is like it's not going to happen overnight. Of course, I might have seen a dip in income because it's a completely different industry and patience and all the things. Like, yeah, it's like it's a hard line between to be like, okay, cool, safety, comfortability, can pay my bills, and then taking calculated risks because obviously you'll have more time to put into it as well.
Totally. And the energy of, especially working in energetics and in the
Oh
spiritual
yeah.
realm, it is taxing and you're healing other people. So it's like, I need to be able to be strong and healed within myself to really be able to put forth the energy of healing for other people. And when I was working a 6 hour shift and then going to do two healing sessions, I was coming from a place of like, the battery is dead. And
Yeah.
we're still able to do it because it's our gift, but it's not coming from a place of like full,
Overflow.
true flow. Exactly. So now I'm just like, okay, I quit. Please give me more
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I agree with the dance because especially being an entrepreneur and then going to work again for somebody else is so
Mm.
hard. You're
Oh
like,
my gosh,
I
I
can maybe do this
realize.
better than you, but I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say that.
No.
It's hard. It's so hard. So I'm grateful to be away from it and to be able to bring the energy back to my students, to my work, to my content, to all these other things for sure.
Amazing. Beautiful. Well, what do you see for yourself for the next 6 months? Will be the last question we'll wrap it up with.
Ooh, I would say definitely more healing, more of
Mm.
my juicing, getting back into my juicing and like healing the body. And I would say probably more like podcasts and events. I've been doing more events. So I would say like just up leveling in my business, having more of a client roster, and reaching more people on how to heal themselves.
Love. Amazing. Thank you so much for today. It was so fun, and somehow it's already been like probably an hour and a
I
half.
don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
I knew
lots
it.
of info
Yeah.
today.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, holistically Hanna. No longer on the TikTok because I just didn't vibe with it. So
I'm the
Instagram and
same. I can't with
good.
TikTok. I just get sucked into it. And then,
Yeah.
wait, is it back in America?
I think they just put it back in. Yeah.
What a
Which
weird,
I was
like,
like, sorry. What a weird thing, right?
what a weird whiplash moment of like, it's gone, jokes, it's back.
Yeah, exactly. That's like how we do things here in America, like actually. Um, but yeah, Instagram is a great way. And then I have a link tree that has like all of my healing services. I also have a website that's all in there too. So it's all basically linked up through my Instagram.
Amazing. I'll link everything below as well so people can have easy access.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Thank you for coming. Is there any final little nugget of wisdom you want to share before we go? Anything on your
Um, yeah, I think the one thing that usually always comes to heart is like if you feel different, run with that, that is your superpower in this life. And
Mm.
that just because people don't understand you doesn't mean that you're not aligned with the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was people judge things that they don't understand. And they're only judging because they don't understand too. So if you feel judgment from people, they don't understand, and that's okay. Maybe it's our job to educate them, but also maybe it's, not our job to educate them as well. It's like, cool, if you understand me, you do. If you don't, you don't. And yeah, I just relate really heavily to the feeling different thing as well. And it's not always a bad thing as well, but I think sometimes when we feel that alien, like you were described at the start, it's almost like a something's wrong with me, or I'm too much, I'm too sensitive, I'm too this, and it's coming back. But what if that was your gift and your superpower?
Absolutely. And also the other thing that comes to mind is the quote of like, don't take advice from people that you don't want to switch lives with. Like
Mm.
making sure you're really like listening to people that you would want to trade places with if you would, or like mentors that really are aligned with the same things that you're doing, not people's opinions that have never walked in your shoes or people that you wouldn't want to trade your situation with. So,
Yeah, something I love with that is almost like being so selective with what's coming in and almost I call it like your diet and not even just what you're eating, but what you're consuming in general, like podcasts, TV, and obviously there's a time and a place for reality TV show and just junky stuff, right? But if you're constantly consuming like world news, all this negative stuff, all these negative phone calls, that's what's going to be your environment. And it's almost like turning the radio dial to a different frequency and only allowing certain things in your life that are in alignment to how you want to feel. I think that was a lot of my work maybe a few years ago when I first got into this stuff is like being so ruthless and this, cool, I'll take this, won't take Aunt Susie's opinion. Thank you so much. You can leave it over there. Because it affects us more than we realize our diet and it goes beyond food.
100% agree.
Mm, amazing. Let's leave it here. So, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And I'm sure we could just keep going, but we'll do a part two if we need to.
Probably. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Hannah.